And we're back. Sorry for the long delay. Hi guys, how you doing? Hope everybody is keeping well. Um, the heat this past week it just took everything out of me. I was planning on making a series of videos, and there are days when I feel up to it, and there are days when the heat just got to me. So, as payment, I thought we'd do a series of videos because I got an awful lot to talk about. So this might be a two-parter or even a three-parter, depending on how it goes. So we'll have to wait and see. Firstly, if you haven't been vaccinated by now, please get vaccinated. No argument. I keep seeing online social media things about um, the rights of people to do this and the rights of people to do that. It's not supposed to be a. I'm not making a political statement here, but there's a great line in the MCU with Avengers Endgame, and Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner starts to argument with I think it's Iron Man. What's his name? Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. And Stark says, "Well, you got to call Captain America." And Stark says, "Well, we're not. It's difficult. We're not on speaking terms." And Ruffalo says, "Thanos is coming, and it won't matter who you're on speaking terms with, but when he comes." And the same thing applies to the virus. The virus is here. It's now into its fourth wave. It won't matter who or what you think of freedoms and rights and this and that and it's my body. And the only thing I can tell you is right now the virus vaccine works. It works on 99% of the people who take it. They don't end up in hospital and they don't die. The 1%, the unvaccinated, these are the people running into hospital. It doesn't matter whether it's North and South America. It makes no difference. States, Canada, it makes no difference. If you are not vaccinated and you get it, there's a very real possibility that you'll end up dead. And in which case, it won't matter whether you're right or left or whether you have a stand and freedom of choice. And when you're dead, you don't have a freedom of choice. The only freedom you've got is to decide when you're going to die, whether you're going to die now or later. Well, you don't have a choice about that. But this is really becoming morbid, and I'm sorry for doing this. But if you're not vaccinated and you're still thinking about it, or you know someone who isn't vaccinated, there's no choice here. Okay, right now, whether it's experimental or not, there's no choice. You have to take precautionary measures if you want to stick around on this planet for as long as you want to. Anyway, sermon over. I didn't want to start that way, but it's really, really, really important because there's an awful lot of people who are ending up in hospital, and God forbid if you have to have a heart operation or a transplant or something, and you can't get into the hospital because it's full of COVID type unvaccinated people, you're screwed. I mean, people in the States are running literally from state to state looking for a hospital bed. Think about that, right? There's somebody in Texas that had to run to Alabama to get into a hospital bed. Anyway, sermon over. I thought that was important. A comment on some of the comments. I read the comments all the time down below. And Julie and it's there for you to read. Julie Eagles was a student. She wasn't at school for very long, but she was a wonderful kid, and I loved her very much. Um, and she wrote back that she gets emotional when she sees the videos and so on and so forth. And I understand that a lot of people are like that. And you have to understand that I'm not somebody who has an ego. Um, Never have been. And when someone says you've had a great inspiration on my life and this and that, and um, you know, I don't set out to do that. I don't set out to become this great turner, change the course of rivers and leap tall buildings in a single bound. I never was. And so when someone says that to me, it gets personal, and I really appreciate it because I don't think of myself as something like that. A lot of teachers do, a lot of executives do, a lot of people do. Maybe that's a fault. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have been more, like me, I. But I'm not that kind of person. And it's when someone says, if it weren't for you, I would have da ba 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 ba, and because of you, I did this, and that's wonderful. I didn't set out that to be that way, but I mean, if I've had some kind of variation on your life and I've affected you in some way that's been positive, that's just I'm thrilled. And I'm honored and I'm humbled by that whole thing. I'm humbled by as many people still remember the little short guy at the front of the room who talked nonstop for hour after hour after hour, and um, it just doesn't occur to me that I would create a following or whatever. And this is just the way I acted. And this is you treat people the way you would want to be treated. Um, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who looks for thank yous and stuff like that. But they come along, and it means a lot to me. It really does. It means a lot to me that somehow along the line I've sort of been able to help you along. Is that the correct term? I guess I don't know. Um, I don't look for that. I never have. Uh, Too many people are looking for that. They're looking for a pat on the back. They're looking for some kind of gratification, self gratification. My payback was when I would say something and you would go, aha, okay, that's payback. That for me. Um, yeah, you can't buy that. You can't buy that with any kind of money. Respect you can't buy with money, and that sort of thing. So for those of you who still get emotional when you see this, I get emotional when I see this. I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and I go, oh, not again. I still look like this. I thought I would be looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something by now. Um, but anyway, if you, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I understand where you're coming from, and I'm glad to have been, part of your life and made things amenable and easier at some point in time. That's all. Um, when you guys get emotional, I get emotional, and I'm an emotional person. Um, you don't often see it, but it's there, and um, the whole thing about if you're sensitive, I'm a way too sensitive person. I am. I can't watch movies like tearjerker type movies. They bother me for weeks and weeks afterwards. Um, yeah, so I'm not a movie person. Plus, my ADHD doesn't allow me to sit still for any length of time. How I'm sitting still for half an hour talking to you guys without getting up and walking around the room beats me. Thank you to Salil Gupta. Salil was one of the last great stage crew mover shakers in my last couple of years at the school. And it was obvious when this kid walked in grade 9 that he had the chops and the skills and stuff to take over. And I didn't know this, but in his comments on the last video, I didn't realize that he'd actually written a book on stage crew. Now this is very interesting because for years I'd wanted to write that book. I was going to write that book and give it to staff members and so on, and never got the chance to do it because I was too busy doing other things. But apparently he did, and and knowing Sahil would be every little nut and bolt and cranny and nook and thing would be accounted for. The only other person in the school that knows exactly what they're doing would be Miss Daniel. That's because we worked together for a long, long time. And she knew exactly what was there, and I knew what was there, and I left. It just kind of left her on her own. And I felt bad about that. This is the kind of person I am. I actually felt bad about leaving the stage crew. But health reasons, I just couldn't continue, and that was that. But congratulations and kudos to Sahil for picking the ball up and trying to run with it as best he could, um, and writing a book. I'm still waiting to see that book. I think that would be great. Now, whether things exist today and whether or not stuff still exists, if it hasn't been stolen, there's people at the school that have no idea, except for Miss Daniel, no idea what's there and how many lavaliers we had and what they were used for and the hanging mics. Sahil knew about the hanging mics, which is, something I expected. Um, but it was um, it was a labor of love. And I was going to write that book, and I never did, and Sahil did, and I'd be interested to see it, because it would have been it would have been thick. It would have had everything in it: how to run an assembly, how many seats you need, thrust stages, stage crew terminology, stage left, stage right, up stage, down stage, um, front of house boom, mid boom, back boom, lighting, and so on and so forth. Anyway, again, Sahil, thank you very much. Congratulations on that. Okay, one thing I'm going to talk about now are the different classes. Yeah, there's band classes, but there were guitar classes, and there were other classes, different kinds of music classes. When I arrived in the school in 1983, with the Malton Plan, as I've spoken about this on a different video, and the loss of grade 13, and the influx of a different kind of student, and the loss of a lot of academic students who went to Morning Star because that was the academic school, the music program suffered big time. And Mr. Waldhauser, who was my predecessor, I mentioned him, he was used to the old school way of doing business. And that changed almost overnight with all these things happening. And all of a sudden, his band classes used to have like 4 or 5 or 6 band classes, grades 9 right through up. And that changed, and all of a sudden, the enrollment in band classes dropped like a stone, and he had to figure something out quickly. So he went with guitars. So he ordered a bunch of cheap guitars, and he was teaching guitar, but he was teaching guitar in the classical way, okay, how to read notes and whatever. So when I came on board, there were a couple of band classes and 2 guitar classes, and my approach to guitar has always been chords first. Of course, if you're old school, that's not the way to teach guitar. Chords first. And so this is the way people get right into it. They start strumming, they become good right away, very quickly. And that's the whole idea with piano or band. I mean, if you get good relatively quickly, you stick with it. And so I revamped the guitar course, and pretty soon I had 2 or 3 guitar classes, which was really, really cool. And I used a book called The Complete Guitarist, which is still available today. And how many hands up? How many of you took my guitar class? Yeah, I see you. That's Magic Mirror and Romper Room, Romper Room. You don't remember Romper Room. You're too young. So the guitar class was basically strumming first, and people got into it and the strumming. And I remember importing from when the board had stores, what they called like a warehouse board stores. They had different musical instruments, and finally they got rid of everything, which is too bad. So I ordered a bunch of guitar picks. Some of you still have them. I know, Grant, you've got one too. You've got an old. They were like green, ugly, recycled mud flap type texture thingy. They were not good picks, but they did the job, and they were basically free. So I handed them all out, and I said to them, don't lose these, because they're going to be collector's items one day. They're going to be worth probably a cent. So sure enough, a few of you still have them. I know Grant's got one. And Ray had mentioned, Ray Kebab, one of the comments he wrote down was that used to let you guys play outside the music room. Why not? The music room was crowded. It was noisy. Why not sit outside in the hall and play? It was good publicity for the music department, people walking by and going, oh, this is a guy on the floor playing guitar. That sounds interesting. I might even take that in the future. And a couple people did. There's a method to my madness. So the guitar class was always wonderful, except for one gentleman who I think to this day, we would have an argument over what was the top string and what was the bottom string. The first day we met, we had an argument about that. The top string is your highest sounding string, which is the one closest to the floor. The bottom string is the lowest sounding string, which is the one closest to your chin when you're holding the guitar. And his viewpoint was no. the top string is the one closest to the ceiling, and the bottom string is the one closest to the floor. And fine, the E string, they're both called E strings, they work. The guitar class was a fun class. It really was. It didn't require a lot of teaching because everybody was pretty much on their own. A few other teachers helped teach the guitar class, including Mr. Perkins. If you remember Mr. Perkins, if those of you who had him, he was a big, tall guy. He was an athlete. He taught science. He taught physics. He taught adult education. He taught everything, foods, you name it. He did it. And when I needed another music teacher for a couple of years, he taught guitar, and he had his own bluegrass band, and he had a bunch of Martin guitars, which were very, very expensive acoustics. And he was an incredible singer, songwriter, bluegrass player, banjo, mandolin, guitar. He could do everything. But he had hands that were essentially baseball gloves. Huge fingers, huge hands. And we had an adult guitar class at the time. And I had said that, Mr. Perkins has bananas for fingers, which he basically did. I don't know how he played an A chord. For those of you who know what an A chord is, you have to fit your fingers tight inside a fret, all three side by each. And he could play it with one finger. But he did. He played with three fingers. And I said to them, Mr. Perkins has bananas for fingers. Sure enough, one of the adults went up to Mr. Perkins and said, "Can I see your bananas?" And Perkins gets back to me and he says, "What did you tell them?" I joked. I said you had bananas for fingers. Because this guy wanted to see my bananas and he wouldn't tell me what he was talking about. That could have gone the wrong way, had Mr. Perkins shown him his bananas. Anyway, the guitar class was one of those classes excuse me, that was fun to teach. A lot of the students who would never have taken music ever took guitar, and they learned something, and that's the bottom line. And I know a lot of you. How many of you are still playing guitar like 10,000 years later? Good. And that's what matters. That's what matters. The matter is that you remember it. And if you haven't played it for 25 years and you pick it up, the muscle memory will kick right in, and all of a sudden you'll be strumming again. You're going, oh my God, I can still do that. Yes, of course you can. That's just the way it is. And then playing videos. I loved playing videos, and I just wish I was still teaching today because of YouTube. There are so many good videos out there. Never got a chance to show the guitar class. The Spanish guitarist who passed away about 30 years ago by the name of Narciso Yepes, Y-E-P-E-S. Look him up. Narciso Yepes, Y-E-P-E-S. He invented a 10-string guitar. It had the basic 6 strings of a classical with 4 additional strings on top. And he spent the rest of his career, most of his career, playing and performing and recording on that 10-string guitar. And it had a sound on it unlike any other guitar you've ever heard. It was a classical guitar. But because of the 4 extra strings, it had a certain sonority that you have to hear to really believe. Look, and he wasn't taped very often, but the videos of him that are on YouTube. Type in Yepes, Yepes, Narciso Yepes. Tremendous guitarist. But there's so many videos that I would show you even today. Um, for those of you with, I think I've mentioned this also before, bass players. I also taught bass. And Chris Pellington, for example, he wanted to play guitar so badly, and he had hands like large steaks, and the meat kind, not the um, vampire kind. Um, and I took one look at his hands and I said, "Nah, you're not playing guitar. You're playing bass." And he picked it up and he ran with it. And I remember coming down the hall, listening to Bach's Partita for cello. This is months later, on bass. And I walked into the room, and there's Chris playing this partita from the music, playing this partita, the Bach cello suite number one, um, not even playing, tapping it, and that is was such an immense leap of talent. You have no idea, Chris. If you're watching, I don't know. You hi. Um, you're one of the bass players that I will never forget. Um, so we had bass and we had guitar players, and um, the stories. I had guitars stolen, then they were returned. If you stole one of those guitars and you still have it, why? It's worth $10. Those guitars were horrible. They never stayed in tune. The cases were worth more than the guitars were worth. And when that happens, I mean, they were firewood. They weren't even firewood. They were cheap plywood. Um, but I have. It was fun. That guitar class was kind of enjoyable. I'm gonna. This will end part one because I'm gonna do part two. See, I have a lot of material. So, yeah, part two coming up soon because I got other classes. I've got the rock class I want to talk about. I've got the the keyboard class that I want to talk about, and a course in Indian music that I wrote in 1995 that never saw the light of day. And I'll talk about that next time. See you later.